Welcome to Musings of a Super Doer with host Christina Kendall. Over the next hour, you will learn what keeps Christina and her guests busy with all their day-to-day life tasks. Now, here's Christina.
Hey there, welcome to Musings of a Super Doer. I'm your host and resident super doer, Kris Kendall. I'm so glad you're joining us today. In this episode, and really in all episodes, I'm just going to share some random musings of what's going on in my world, and maybe some things will relate to your world too. So today we're going to talk about audiobooks, and I have a lot to say about those. And then I'll share some random musings about family portraits. And then if there's time, I'm going to talk about my addiction to television and one of my current series that I've been watching called You. So we'll just go ahead and get started. Okay, so I love audiobooks. It took me a while to start getting into them. I remember so back when I was super into Twilight, which feels like forever ago, but it was probably, 10-ish years ago, 10, 12 years ago. After the first movie came out is when I discovered Twilight, the series, the books. I'd heard, random people talk about them, but I didn't ever read them until after I just came across the first movie on TV. So it had already been on cable. So it was a little bit, I was definitely late to the game. Anyways, I read the books, became obsessed, and then I wanted all things Twilight, and eventually got the audiobooks, and I listened to the audiobooks over and over and over again. Those, I think, were the only audiobooks I've ever been able to just listen to over and over and over again. Prior to those, I had tried listening to a handful, and I just couldn't, like, literally they'd put me to sleep. The voices were so monotone, and just like, really, I couldn't do it. So I just stopped. I didn't even try listening to any other audiobooks for a long time. And then maybe 5 years ago, when I started creating audiobooks for my own books, my own novels, my romance novels, I started to listen to other books that I liked, and they were enjoyable. I mean, I guess I'm kind of picky about the narrator, and some of these romance, if you've ever listened to a romance audiobook, you probably know what I'm talking about. Some of these narrators like to perform the audiobook, and that's not really what I want. I want somebody to read it to me in a casual tone, I guess. I don't want every single word to be drawn out, and I don't want accents. I don't want all that. So there were some narrators that just, I would laugh out loud at places I wasn't supposed to be laughing, right? It was just ridiculous. So I stopped listening to them. And just in the past 2 or 3 years, I've gotten back into audiobooks, but now I only listen to nonfiction audiobooks. So I like to listen to a lot of investing books, and self-help, personal development, productivity, all these kind of things. And, I've talked about some of the books that I've listened to here in the past, but, I haven't gone into a lot of depth about the audiobooks in particular. So, for me, we have this lake house a couple hours away. And so when I drive there, it's about 3 hours there and 3 hours home. And so I make a pretty good dent in most audiobooks, if not actually finish an entire one. And also I like to listen to them at 1.5 speed. So, I really, paying for a fancy narrator really doesn't matter, because I'm not listening to the voice or the intonations or any of that kind of stuff. I'm just getting the content, like sucking it up. And there are probably some books I've listened to at 2x speed, but usually 1.5 is fine for me to kind of keep it moving without getting bored, and without it sounding so monotone that I get a little drowsy, especially when I'm driving, right? So I have to be careful about that. But I love being able to just listen to the story kind of in the background, not that I'm not paying attention to the book, but I'm paying more attention to the road. And so it's just sort of like being absorbed, like it's just happening without me having to think too much about it. Now, there's certainly some drawbacks because in a lot of the investing or self-help kind of books, they often will have like charts, or they'll have like little workbook pages where you might fill in, like it'll say, okay, right now make a list of all of your favorite things, or the things that you don't like, or the blah blah blahs, whatever it is. So you miss out on some of that interactiveness that's in a paper book that you won't get in an audiobook. But in those cases, um pretty much in every case that I've come across where a book has some sort of an interactive element or chart or images that are important to the information they're sharing, they'll make a like a PDF document available to the audiobook buyer. So just the other day, I went into my Audible account. I listen on audio or Audible. I went into my Audible account in my library. There's a button called Your Library that has all the books I've ever purchased. And um and I just kind of scrolled down the list, and you could see any that have an accompanying booklet or a downloadable PDF. And so I was able to grab all of those that I've missed in the past 6 months of just listening. Um, so that's something to keep in mind. If you wouldn't necessarily do like a workbook as an audiobook. However, there are some things, like I worked on a workbook for a client that was for NLP, the neuro linguistic, whatever the P stands for. I can't think of the word. The Tony Robbins stuff. And they the headlines you could do in your mind, right? You don't have to write it all down. So in her workbook pages, it would say like, make a list of this, or think of 3 situations when this has happened to you. And so you would write it down, but you don't have to write it down. You could just come up with it in your head, and you could follow along pretty easily. But for me, I like it for the self-help and the investing strategies, buying real estate, that kind of stuff. And business advice. But I have a lot of friends who listen to the audiobooks for like romance. They just want to escape while they're vacuuming, doing laundry, just cleaning the house, or distracted watching the kids practice their sports. They can be listening to their audiobook without it being obvious that they're not paying super attention. Or they can still pay attention to what's going on, but have something going on in the background for themselves. So that's kind of fun. And then one of the other things that is great about audiobooks, one of the obvious things, is beyond just being able to multitask, which is what I like to use it for, is an accessibility issue. So I'm beginning to appreciate this more as I get older, that my eyes are not what they used to be. I think if I tried to pick up a paperback today, it would be tough to read it without glasses, because the print's pretty tiny in an average book. I didn't notice this when I was a kid, but now I can see it's pretty tiny. Like it's getting smaller or something. I don't know. So for those who have vision issues, or just can't focus, for whatever reason, maybe they get migraines, or whatever the situation is, for people that have trouble reading a book, whether it's a paperback or an like an e-reader or something like that, having the option of using an audiobook really opens up the world to them. It makes their entertainment available, and information and knowledge available to them in a way that hasn't always been the case. And it's not so limited, right? So now you can get pretty much any kind of book in an audiobook. Now, as an author, they're great. They are. It's really nice to have this additional source of income and this additional way to get my content out in front of readers. The problem is they're very expensive to produce. So I use a service called ACX, and that's through, I think it's probably like Audible Creation. I don't know what the X stands for, but it's through Audible, which is owned by Amazon. So essentially it's Amazon. They connect all the narrators who want to find a book to narrate. They get all the narrators together, and then all the people who have a book to narrate can come to them and say, this is my book. I'm looking for a narrator. If you already have a narrator, or if you're narrating yourself, you can record your files and you can just publish them on ACX and put them, and that'll get onto Amazon, Apple, and Audible. So those are the 3 standard stores. If you are exclusive, if you do a non-exclusive, you get a much lower royalty payment, so you make a lot less money. But then you can go on to Nook and Kobo and Spotify and Pandora. I don't know what all the different distribution sites are, but that will get distributed to much more stores than just those 3 that I mentioned. But anyway, so you can either bring your already recorded files and upload them and, start selling your audiobook. Usually what I do is I hire a narrator from ACX. So I will put out there that I pick a book that I'm going to be narrating next, that I want to turn into an audiobook next. And it's sort of like an ad. I make it I open it up for auditions, and then narrators who are interested, and I have to choose like how much I'm going to pay, what style of narration I want. Do I want it like in British English? Do I want an accent? Do I want it to be very serious? Do I want it to be very humorous? Whatever tones? Do I want a male or a female? And then I'll start to get auditions. So when I recently did this, I opened up a new book, and I got probably 15 auditions within the first day or so. And then, you can listen to clips. Either they'll read a short script. So I provided like 1 page from that book. And I tried to include a page that has narration, like background exposition, dialogue between a couple different characters, so I can hear how they're doing the 2 characters, because I want to make sure that it's not crazy difference. Like, I'm fine if one character has like a deeper voice and the other character has, higher tone or whatever. But if you're speaking for a woman, I don't need you to try to make it sound like a woman necessarily. Maybe higher or softer, but it doesn't have to be full on, impersonations or anything like that for my books. So I listened to, I try to pick a sample of a page that has several different things that I care about. And then I go through and just choose which narrator I like, usually based on what they're, so this time I narrowed it down to 2 or 3 that I liked. And I talked to each of them and I told them, what I was looking for, the timeline, and asked them what they charged. They charge per finished hour. So it's PFH. So let's say it's $100 per finished hour. So if you've got a 60,000 word book, that's probably about 10 hours 10 finished hours, maybe between 8 and 10, depending on, I don't know how quickly it goes, maybe 9-ish. And so, that you're going to pay, if it's $100 per finished hour for 9 hours, you're going to pay them $900. Okay. So you can just agree. Once you come to an agreement on what you're going to pay and you choose the narrator that you want, you can make an offer through their system. And you can either pay that full $900 yourself, or you can pay, you can do a royalty share if the narrator's willing to do that. So some narrators, rather than getting paid up front, they want equity. They want a piece of the future royalties. So you can work out an arrangement where maybe they'll do it for $200 plus 50% of future royalties, or they'll do it for free plus a higher percent of royalties, or they'll do it for $25 per finished hour plus 30% future royalties. I don't know. I've never done one of these personally. I don't like that idea, so I've never done a royalty share, but it's an option, and that's especially helpful for new authors who don't have a lot of money to put up front. I mean, $100 per finished hour is pretty low. At my height of audiobooks, I think I was probably paying 4-ish hundred per hour per finished hour. Now, but my books are short, so they're more in the like 5 to 6 hour range, so it wasn't quite as much. But still, if you assume it's going to be around $2,000, that's a lot of money up front. And for a new author who maybe isn't making that much money yet, they might not have a big backlog of books that are bringing in constant cash flow. That's a big outlay. So if you can find a narrator who's willing to do the work for a much lower price, then that's great for you. The risk is really for the narrator, because they're doing all this work, 10 hours of work or 5 hours of work, and that book might not sell any money. It might not sell, or it may only make $100 the first month that it's released, and then $60 the second month it's released, and $40 the third month. Like, it may take a really long time to earn that full amount. So there's a lot of narrators who are not looking for a royalty share. They just want to get paid up front and move on. They don't want to have to hope and try to sell your book for you and constantly be promoting it so that they can earn their money back, right? So that's not really something that I ever went for, but it's an option. And it's something to keep in mind, because a lot of listeners, readers, they get very cranky if they can't find the audiobook. I mean, I've seen posts of people like, kind of attacking authors for not always creating an audiobook, or for maybe they have a series of 5 books. Maybe they make audiobooks for the first 3 and then they don't make them for the last 2, and the listeners get really mad. It's expensive. And if you put out many thousands of dollars for those first few books and you haven't made that back, it's really hard to justify continuing. Sometimes you just have to cut your losses, right? So it's not always beneficial. I think I have one series, and this was the last one I started. I got 1 or 2 of the audiobooks done, and they just never made money. And I stopped. If there was a 10-book series, I stopped. And, I'm sure people were mad that I didn't keep it going, but you can't afford to keep doing it. So that's one of the other options. You pay for it yourself. You can do this royalty share, or there's a new thing that some people are doing, and there's a lot of controversy around it, is using AI to do audiobooks. So just the same way you could use this chat GBT, or I don't know, whatever it's called, to create documents for you, and you can have AI write for you. You can also have AI speak for you. So if you have a written document, you can plug it into one of these tools, and it will, use a computer generated voice and read it to you. And it does a pretty decent job. Now, it's not perfect. It's not exactly like a human. And if you're really listening, you can tell that it's, robotic, but it's pretty decent. And for the most part, for a listener like me, who's going to zoom up the speed anyways, and who just wants the content and doesn't really care that much about the narration, it's awesome. So I have recently started to do a few of my books with this AI narration, and they're okay. It's interesting. So for what I've been doing with them, so on Audible, I think they still do not allow non-human narrators, right, in their book. So if you go to Audible and you buy an audiobook, it's going to have a human narrator. I don't think you're going to find an AI generated, or you shouldn't. If you do find one, you can report it and they'll take it down, because you're not supposed to. But Google, if you use Google Play, if you were to buy an audiobook from Google, it might have been produced by their AI system. They've made this available to authors for free. If you are selling an ebook on Google, you can also hit a button to create an audiobook, and it will take the entire book, and in like 5 minutes, it's pretty quick. It will create all the files for every chapter, and you can choose male, female, again, accents, if you want a certain dialect, if you want it to be in a certain conversational tone. So you make those choices and you hit the button and it just generates an entire audiobook for you. So I did this. I've done this a couple times now. Um, yeah, it's decent. Now, of course, when you use one of these services, you are supposed to listen to it. Let them generate all the files, and then you're supposed to listen to make sure that it's worth, you know, it's good, if there's any real issues, because there are certain words that they say in a funny way, right? They don't pronounce everything exactly right. And so you should listen to the whole thing, and if there's a word that is not being pronounced right by the AI, then you'd probably rewrite it in your document phonetically so that it'll be pronounced correctly. And then sometimes pauses are a little bit off. So, it's not perfect, but it's probably 80% good, which sometimes a B is good enough. And when the difference is, $2,000 for an A plus document or audiobook, or free for a B, it's maybe you just do the AI. It's an easy option. I don't think it's going to put narrators out of business, because people will always want like that real human emotion and touch and feeling that they get from a real person. So I think that those are always going to be in demand. Just like AI writing is probably not going to put writers out of business, right? Because the AI, like if you've looked at a document that's created with AI, it's super repetitive. It's not usually that interesting. Like, it's maybe a bunch of facts put together, but it doesn't always flow very well. I mean, it's a great start for any writer. Like, if I were a kid in college, I probably would use that to start an essay, and then I'd have to go in and like change everything to sort of fix it and make it good. So I wouldn't say that most of the AI stuff that I've looked at is great, but it's definitely, probably at that 40 to 50% mark of good, so not enough to be done, not quite 80%. You're not going to get a B. You'd probably still get like a C or a D or an F, but if it generates words and it fills pages and it gets you started to like sort of spur your own creativity and to spur your own thought process so you can fill in with real stuff, then I think that that's okay. And so, that's just one of the things that is, with time, it'll get better and people will learn how to use it. They'll learn how to recognize it. Just like, when you answer a call and it's a recording and they're like, hello, is, Kris there? And I'm like, yeah, speaking. And then they're like, oh, hey, Kris. And they start talking and you're like, is this a human or is this a recording? Because it's like they're saying the right things at the right time, but it's like almost, you can sort of tell that it's not actually a human. And if you stop talking and stop answering, they're still going on as if you had said something back. So it's kind of like that. Like, we'll get used to it. We'll be able to recognize it, I think, over time. And we will use it where it's helpful and not use it in a lot of places where it's not adding to the experience or making it more meaningful in any way, which I think is what people look for, especially in like pleasure reading. They're looking for a connection and an escape and something joy, that makes them happy to cuddle up with in bed or whatever, not something that's weird and jilted and just, disjointed stories of things. So anyways, that's basically all I have to say about audiobooks. I just wanted to share some of the, my musings on them, what I like, what I don't like, how I've done them in the past, and how they might be interesting. Okay, so we're going to take a quick break. Go grab a snack, check your stocks, you know the drill. When we get back, I'm going to be talking about family portraits.
Welcome back to Musings of a Super Doer with your host, Christina Kendall. Have a question for Christina or her guests? Join us on the show at 866-472-5788. That's 866-472-5788. Now, back to the show.
Hey friends, if you're just joining us, I'm Kris Kendall, host of Musings of a Super Doer. Before the break, we were talking about audiobooks and my love for them. And now I want to muse a little bit about family portraits. Now, this is a pretty random thing, as are most of my topics. But I've been thinking about them lately. So as I get older, as my kids, are both adults now, I think I'm, getting a little bit more sentimental in my old age. And I realized that, I love just looking at those old pictures of when the kids were babies, when they were younger. I have this, digital photo frame, and I put, just a ton of pictures from throughout the year. Um, and it's really fun to just see these random pictures of moments that I've forgotten about, certain outfits that they wore, or certain toys that they had, or certain places that we went, or friends that we spent time with. And so, those have just been, they mean a lot to me, and I can understand um why people will fill like their entire house and walls with all the pictures. I'm really bad about putting pictures up on the walls. So right now I have in my family room a ginormous wall, like blank wall, because after we painted it, um, I didn't really know what to do with that space. And so I did nothing. And then it's still 3 years later, nothing. So I need to figure it out. I have a plan of what I want to put there, but my husband is not on board with that plan. So I need to work on him a little bit more. But what I've done with a lot of our family photos is, um, like I said, I really like the digital photo frame, because then I can, in one little frame, I can see, 200 pictures that just get rotated through, cycled through. So that's a great way of having lots of photos that bring me so much joy and happiness just to see them, and without taking up a lot of space. I don't have to fill a wall, and I don't have to buy all the frames, and I don't have to dust the frames and take them down to replace them with new pictures, and all that stuff. So I definitely recommend that. It's a great gift for mom, grandma, sister, aunts, uncles, anybody who um maybe isn't as good. And actually, I'm so sexist, right? I say mom, grandma, aunts, uncles, sisters. The guys like them too, right? This is the perfect gift for your brother, your uncle, the grandpa, the dads that are, especially the grumpy kind, that don't do anything sentimental. They have no pictures on their walls. If you want a picture of your family on their wall, you've got to bring it and a nail and hang it up yourself, that kind of thing. Get them one of these. Mine is the skylight, I think. It's a digital frame, and I literally, when I take a picture that I like and I want to see it, I email it from my phone to my account, and then it just shows up in my frame. I have to like hit the frame, tap it, and it's there. So this is something that grandpa can do to get updated pictures of the kids and always have them. And he'll never admit maybe that he likes seeing these pictures of these family photos, but I'm sure he would appreciate that. So if you're looking for a gift idea, that's a good one. But I digress, as always. Anyways, so specifically about family portraits. Okay, so when we had our first son, we spent a lot of time taking pictures of the baby, right, as everybody does, and it was wonderful, and we loved it. Um, and we got into a pretty good habit of capturing lots of moments, trying not to do too many, but um, it was always something that was important to us. And so right now I have, millions of pictures that I can pull up just about any moment in time, every birthday party, every sporting team that they were on, every event, etc. I've got those. But I was thinking about it when I was a kid, we didn't do family photos. I literally so I'm the oldest. I was the first kid. So I definitely have pictures of me and my mom. She did the obligatory Kmart photo and J.C. Penney photo with me and her, me sitting on her lap, and that weird kind of gradient background when I was probably like a year old, maybe 2 years old. And then my brother's he's about 2.5 years younger than me. There's probably, I'm guessing that there's one or two photos in existence that have me and him as uh like toddlers, playing together, but literally that's it. I cannot think of a single picture of me and my mom and my brother where we were just, sitting down and somebody took a picture of the three of us together. Not one. And my younger siblings, they're, like 5 and 8 years younger than me, something like that. By the time they came around, um, I think that there were more like of those pocket kind of cameras. More people just had cameras handy. They had those like disc cameras and those um it was like easier, maybe, I don't know, to just take quick snapshots and even Polaroid stuff like that. So we do have more pictures of the two of them, but I don't know of a single picture in existence of the four of us kids sitting together in one photo, and definitely not one with my mom. And someday she's not going to be around, and I'm going to be looking for pictures of me and her with my siblings, either two of us together with my mom, other than, okay, my wedding photo that exists. So at my wedding, we took the family photos. There is a picture of me, my husband, my siblings, and my mom. So that is literally the only photo I think we've ever taken with all of us together. Um, so yeah, that even my brothers, so the only other wedding was my youngest brother. Um, he had a formal wedding and we took pictures. They probably took that photo as well. I never got a copy of it. So hopefully he has a copy of it or he could get a copy of it. But we just never did them. And I really regret not having those, and I'm very sad to not have them, and I wish my mom had prioritized, thinking of the future and kind of planning for that sentimentality that we might have someday. I'm sure she would love to have those pictures today to look back on, and I certainly wish that we had some of those pictures. I think I was thinking of this yesterday because I have a girlfriend who has two babies, and, she's exhausted. She works full time. She's got a, you know, 3-month-old now and a 2-year-old. And she's just in that time of her life where it's exhausting, just trying to find time to eat and shower is difficult. So the last thing on her mind is taking pictures. So I don't know if she's doing the like formal photos. Like, I know she takes pictures of the kids. We see pictures all the time of like these cute little moments playing, laughing, like those adorable individual photos. I don't know that they've sat down and the four, mom, dad, and the two babies have been in one photo yet. There might have been one right out of the hospital, but there might not have. And I really, as much as I bug her about random things that I don't want to like always nag, I want to like tell her, please just take some of these pictures because you're going to love them. Right now it seems like a hassle to like brush your hair, put on a clean shirt, get the kids clean, sit down, try to get everybody not crying, looking forward, setting the timer on the camera if nobody else is there, getting the camera on the bookshelf with the, can of Coke behind it or whatever, like get it all just right so that you can take this cute post photo, but make it happen, because those are the moments that it feels like unnecessary. It feels frivolous. It feels silly at the time. And you're like, ugh, okay, whatever. Who cares? We've got lots of pictures. Do we all need to be together in one? Yes, you do. I feel like I really wish I had some of those photos of me and my mom beyond the age of 2. I don't know that there are very many that exist. Now I know my mom didn't like taking photos. She still doesn't really like taking photos, but certainly in her 20s and 30s, she like always avoided the camera. And I can appreciate that. I definitely went through a period and yeah, of avoiding the camera. And I realized I was doing it, and I made some changes to make sure that I could feel better, and those changes are like putting on makeup. I'm really lazy about putting on makeup, and I don't usually do it, but I started to, like, put on makeup when I was gonna be in situations where there was a camera because I wanted to capture those moments. I didn't wanna be hiding. I wanted to be able to stand next to one of my kids or next to my husband and smile and feel good and know that that's a picture I can look back on in 10 or 20 years and be happy about. And I mean, let's be real, even the pictures, if I look terrible in 20 years when I look back, I'm gonna think I look great, right? Because I'm gonna be 20 years older. This is the best I'm ever gonna look going forward, right? So, I have to put things into perspective too, and I hope that, um, other people will appreciate that if you have loved ones, whether you think that it's important or not, take a moment the next time you're with them to just snap a selfie. Set up a camera on the table, lean it against the salt and pepper shaker, hit the 3-second timer, and just smile and take a photo together. Because those moments, even if they happen all the time, it's easy to not forget them, but it's really, really nice to have those photos to look back on and just remember and think about, remember that day and we were, talking about this funny thing that happened, and then we went to the store and then we saw that weird product that was so hilarious, and whatever those moments are. It's really nice to capture those when you can and to have the photographic evidence that they happened, right? Okay, so I probably have beaten that. Um, gosh, I don't even want to. I don't. Why am I sensitive about talking about dead horses? Right, beating that dead horse. No, anyways, I've talked enough about that. So let's take another quick break. And when we get back, I am going to be sharing some silly musings about what was I going to talk about next? Oh, yeah, TV, one of my very favorite topics that everybody knows is my very favorite topic. Okay, be back in a minute. Hey, friends, we're back. For those of you just joining, you missed some fascinating conversation about audiobooks and a little bit of a lecture from me, my favorite kind of musings, about family portraits and the importance of taking some now and then. But you're just in time to hear my random musings about TV and how much I love it, and the show that I'm watching called You. Okay, so uh, I went on this trip recently, with some girlfriends that I haven't seen in years, many years, and so it was so nice. We went to Cabo. We just sat at the pool for 4 days straight, and it was wonderful. But what I realized is that probably half of my conversations, and it's really embarrassing. It was embarrassing at the time, but I did it anyways, but now it's even really more embarrassing talking about it. But at least half of my conversations started with, "Oh, I'm watching this show," or "Have you seen this show?" or "I saw this show." Like I'm like obsessed with TV. Like it's my whole world, and it's really not, which is so funny. I mean, if you've listened to any of these episodes, you know that I've got a lot of stuff going on. So I can only watch so much TV, and yet I managed to get in a lot. And so much so that it's like the topic of every conversation I have. Um, okay, so here's the deal with TV. I am very productive. I do a lot of stuff. I've got a lot of things going on. I work full time. I've got all these projects, etc. But um, since I started working at home, and actually this is even pre-COVID, I've worked at home for a long time. I like to have I guess pre-COVID, I didn't really have the TV on during the day very often, but when COVID hit and we came home, right at the very beginning during that lockdown period, I had CNN on like 24/7 because I was just like waiting for the moment when they say, okay, and we have the cure. We're good. And everybody's going to get it in the next 3 days and you're going to be back to the world and everything's fine. So every day I'd be watching CNN, just waiting for that, cure. And as you probably remember in those early days, every day just got worse and worse, and like more deaths and more cities and more, like it just was awful. But I felt like I had to, keep it in the background going, just in case there was something important, good or bad. I needed to know if there was something important. I think probably part of me was like waiting for them to say it's evolved and now people are becoming vampires, or it's happening, right? The zombie apocalypse is happening, and so I needed to be ready. So I got into that habit of always having the news on in the background while I was working. Now, during those early days of COVID, I was very productive. We had a lot of things happening at work that needed to be shifted to online. So that was, took up a lot of time. And then was starting to do a lot more training. I was doing a lot of like kind of self-help personal development-y kind of things for myself. And so um I was very busy, and having the TV on was just sort of a nice, distraction. I never felt alone because I had 2 kids that were in school at the time. So they were in certain part, one was in the office, one was at the kitchen table or in his room, and I was in my room working, so that we all had private space to be on these Zoom calls and everything. And so I'd be locked away in my room till about 6 o'clock in the evening. Then I'd turn off my work computer. I would come out to the family room, have dinner, and then turn on my personal computer and start doing, my fun stuff in the evening. So I still kind of have that routine. During the day when I'm working, I have my work computer on. I have um CNN on in the morning, and then I switch that sometime around noonish. I usually switch to like Bloomberg, and I've got investment, financial news going on in the background, just in case there's anything I need to know about. Same thing if I need to make a quick change to a stock, or I need to do anything, I can. But and then at about 5:30 or 6 in the evening when I'm done, I turn off my personal computer. I move out of this is my office chair that I sit in. It's just basically like a sofa chair, but this is my office chair. I move to the actual couch where I spend my evenings, and then I do that transition, and then I've got my personal computer with me. So I have this sort of routine. When I'm on the other side of the couch and the personal computer comes out, then I start watching my shows. And I have different shows that I watch with different members of my family, right? So with my son, who we've been doing this as he grew up. We watched all the kid shows together when he was little. He was obsessed with Barney for years, and then all of the Nickelodeon and Disney shows. And we've just kind of evolved as he's gotten older. We watched a lot of like Mentalist and Scorpion and these sort of like government mystery sort of shows that were fun to like figure out who did it. Oh, Monk is one. We watched every episode of Monk probably twice through. So those are the kind of shows I watched with him when he was little. And then as he's gotten older, we've evolved into different shows. Right now, I'm watching Ozark. No, not Ozark. God, no, not Ozark. I can't watch that with the kids. Outer Banks, which I talked about last week. And then we are watching Will Trent, which is a new series. And we watched all the Marvel shows, so like Iron Fist and Luke Cage, and what is the one with the girl? Gosh, I can't think of her name. But Flash and like all those kind of superhero-y shows. I don't know if those are Marvel or DC, but whichever ones. We watched most of those series that were like 3, 4, 5 series long, or seasons long. So we went through all those kind of during the COVID times. With my other son, my older son, right now we're watching Fire Country, which I love, and he will occasionally, if no one's around, sit with me and laugh about 90 Day Fiance the other way, and some of the crazy situations there. His favorite couple is Jenny and Samit, and they're in India, and so he loves them. And so he and I have a couple shows. Then there are the shows that I watch with my husband. Now that's usually Street Outlaws. We watch all of the Gold Rush, um, those kind of shows. Let's see. Um, we've got a handful. Oh, he likes to watch all the Gordon Ramsay shows. So we watch Master Chef and Kitchen Nightmares, and we're just going to start the Next Level show. And so I save those for when he's with me, then we watch those. And then when nobody's with me, when I'm watching just myself, but everyone's home, then I'll watch the either Hallmark Channel kind of, cheesy romancy shows or movies, or I will watch like the Alaskan Bush People, or some of the home improvement shows like Hometown, or Beach House Bargains, things like that. And then when people are sitting down with me, then I'll, watch whatever they want. If nobody's home, then I watch my shows. Now, my shows are all of the so my shows would be like Ozark is one that I watch alone. I don't know, like more adulty stuff that I don't feel comfortable watching with my kids, even though they're adults. I still can't do it. I was watching I had a friend over, and we were watching the movie Lady Chatterling's Lover. Is that what it's called? It's a book, right? I think that's the name of it. And there's a new movie like on Netflix or something like that. So we were watching that, and it was pretty good. It was fine. But there's some nude scenes that were like very explicit. And they were long. It wasn't just like a flash. It was like a long scene. And so right during one of them, they're like frolicking naked through this like meadow and just like zooming in on these parts. My son comes home from being out. I'm like, hitting the button like he caught me watching porn or something. I'm like, turn it off. And my friend's like, really? And I'm like, I can't do it. I can't watch this with my kids. Like, I can't do it. So turn that off, and we finished it later when no one was around. But anyways, one of the shows that I watch by myself is called You. Now, this I think the kids probably would enjoy, but it's just I started watching it by myself, and now I don't want to have to wait to like anybody to get caught up or to be constantly explaining who's who. Sometimes you don't want to explain who's who or why something is funny or the backstory. I just want to watch my own show. So one of them is You. I think so I just finished the most recent series last night, or season, sorry. I think it's season 4. So what's interesting about this show, if you haven't watched it, it's a little bit, well, it's a lot weird. I mean, it's very dark. It's murdery, right? It's along the lines of Dexter, a little bit less gory than Dexter, but kind of a psychological thriller, I guess. But the guy, it's written in second person POV, point of view. So first person, and I write a lot of books in first person. So first person is how I'm talking to you. I am the first person. I'm saying I, me, we, like it's happening, and I'm present in this conversation. Third person is if I was talking about somebody else, right? So that's like a narrator's point of view. Like he went to the store, then she saw him there, and they did this other thing. But the person speaking is not part of the scene, right? It's a third person perspective. So the second person is weird. I don't even know how to describe it, but basically it's this you. So this whole thing is he's talking about you. He's telling somebody their story. So he's sort of part of the situation, part of the scene, but from their perspective, it's really weird. So it's called You, and it's all him saying like, you looked so pretty today. You walked in, and when you asked me how I was doing, I was surprised that you even noticed me. You grabbed a banana off the counter, whatever. So it's this weird perspective, first of all, that is not commonly used in television shows, at least that I can recall. I've read it in a few books. Well, okay, I never read it in a book, and then about a year ago, I was at a book conference, and I was watching something about a book, and it was written in this weird second person perspective, second person, yeah. I don't know. Those books, I don't know that author did very well. I think that she's probably a good author, but it's such a weird way to read, especially a romance novel, that I think they didn't sell very well, and I don't think she's writing anymore. I think that was sort of the progression of this talk that I watched, or it was something. But anyways, yeah, so if you're curious about English and writing and perspectives, this is, just purely for the, interesting POV. I would recommend watching You. Now, the show itself is, like I said, quite dark. It's about a guy who has these, murderous tendencies, as some people do, and he doesn't always know when to stop. And although, he's basically a good person, but sometimes he goes overboard, and sometimes he gets confused about reality and stuff that's not reality. And it doesn't usually end well for the people he cares about. So there's several seasons. It's really good. Each one is different, but ultimately kind of the same. I've really enjoyed it, and the way this last season, I believe it's season 4, the way the last episode ended was, or the last couple episodes really, was a surprise to me. I didn't really see it coming in that way. And I usually don't. I don't really spend, because I'm always working in the background. The TV show is generally my background, and I'm doing other things, and it's just sort of on. I didn't really see this twist coming that other people might see right off the bat, like, oh my God, this is what's actually happening. I never know what's actually happening. I didn't know that the kid saw dead people. At the very end, I had to like stare at the screen, like, but what? Oh, but I guess, okay, yeah, I guess that they never spoke back, like all that guy. I never see these things coming. I just sort of take things at face value for the most part, and enjoy it or not, and don't think too much about it. So for me, I've really been enjoying it. And if that's something that sounds interesting to you, I think check it out, because you might really enjoy it too. Okay, I think we are just about out of time. I managed to ramble on quite a bit today about some of these other things, audiobooks and family portraits. So I will go ahead and wrap it up. And next week, we're going to have the special guest. I thought he was going to be available to do it today. We had to push it to next week. So it will be next week. And I'm also going to be talking about my other new obsession. I always have lots of obsessions. My air fryer. Again, late to the game. I'm like 3 years late to this air fryer craze. I have had an air fryer in my kitchen for a year and a half. I got it for Christmas 2 years ago. I started using it 5 days ago. Like, it's crazy, but I've used it a lot in the past 5 days, and I am obsessed. So, anyways, thank you so much for joining. I'm so glad we were able to hang out today. I hope I've inspired you to be a super doer, or at least think about doing things. You don't have to actually do them all. So for now, goodbye from your host and resident super doer, Kris Kendall. Now go do something.
Thanks for tuning into Musings of a Super Doer with Christina Kendall. We hope you've enjoyed today's show and look forward to having you back next week. Until then, have a beautiful week.